And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
And I'll tell you this, it's been a while since I've said this, a long time. Actually, maybe I've never said this. But don't forget to shop on shop.rblrsports.com because I'm repping a bad boy right now. Maybe you can't see, maybe you can. But so it's super mad comfy. It's the best time of the year to get this bad boy, especially since it's summer. So anyways, I just had to toss that in there just because it's been a while since I bought one of these bad boys. So let's get right to it. We got some spicy talk, some dream trades, or some trades that are also reasonable as well, as dreamy as they are, I guess. But what is this show without the iconic duo? Tampa Bay's hottest podcast duo is what I'd call them. To my right, the one and only Mr. Zach Blaine. What's going on with you, man?
Not much, brother. How are you doing this evening?
So far, so good, man. It has been mad rainy these days. As you know, I think a hurricane hit my not my family, but hurricane hit Texas, and I think it just came by us. So we got that rain. So it's been mad rainy over here. Super kind of, I guess,
hot and nasty
stormy,
here.
but
we haven't had any rain.
Oh yeah, dude.
Wood, brother.
Well, I'd rather take hot and no rain because I'll tell you this, man. The humidity down in Florida is like getting your clothes out of the dryer before they're actually dry. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, yeah, it is rough, dude. So, to my left, last but not least, the final piece to this RBLR Buccaneers puzzle. He is the one and only Carter Brantley.
Ouch. How y'all doing, man? I appreciate that glorious intro. Hopefully StreamYard won't kick me out of the show again, but we'll see. But we've got a really great show coming up for you. And like you said, training camp right around the corner. Just a really great time of the year. Because baseball's in full swing and football's right around the corner. There's a lot of, the NBA summer leagues going on. So it's definitely, not the best time for football, but it's still, we're getting there. It's close. We can see it. But yeah, there's still some Bucs related news that we're going to get into. And like Mr. Musab mentioned, we're going to be talking about some realistic, but still dream scenario players that we'd like to trade for if we were in the Bucs front office. So we'll get to that. But first, I ran across this while just, scrolling the internet, as unfortunately I sometimes do, a little bit too much probably, if we're being honest. But there was a little article in CBS, they did this little top 20 running backs in the NFL. And my favorite player ever, this generation's Bo Jackson, Eric Dickerson, fill in the blank of great NFL running backs, was not there. Rachaad White, he was not in the top 20. I mean, my goodness, what an atrocity. I thought it was an interesting little piece. And, it had some names up there that I was kind of like, as Mr. Tariq would say, it raised my eyebrow a little bit, so it was kind of interesting. But I wanted to hear y'all's thoughts. Did you think that Rachaad White was kind of a left out guy, like you were kind of wondering why he wasn't in the top 20, or maybe you thought honorable mention because he was an honorable mention, but maybe you thought honorable mention, that's probably appropriate. Zach, you're the biggest Rachaad White fan I know other than myself, so we'll start with you.
Solid argument there. No, so I'm not surprised. I do think that they kind of disrespected his pass catching ability. I don't think Jaylen Warren is a better. I think he was the last guy on the list. Was Jaylen Warren?
He was.
I don't think that he's a better running back than Rachaad White. I think he had a better offensive line or a better run game last year. But I think as an all-around running back, I would probably put Rachaad White at 20 maybe over Jaylen Warren for sure. Everyone else on the list, I like reading it. I understood. The biggest surprise to me was ETN was so low. If I'm being honest with you. I felt like he should have been higher up. But as far as Rachaad White, I understand him not being on the list. If you just are, I'm imagining CBS is probably not watching all of Tampa's games. So if you just look at the stats, like what he averaged, less than 4 yards a carry or less than 3 yards a carry or something, or very close to 3 yards a carry or something around that last year.
I'm not sure of the exact figure, but it wasn't exactly super high.
It wasn't a great number, is what I'll say. So I guess if you're just looking at the stats like that, then I understand where they came from with it.
Yeah, I mean it's tough. He's not exactly a traditional rushing yards kind of back. And he's not a super analytic star. Like I will say, in defense of Mr. Warren, the 20th guy on the list, first guy named, so to speak. He had a lot of broken tackles last year. He
Yeah.
was really, really good in that arena. And he was also kind of a 1A, 1B with Najee Harris. I don't know how much Harris is going to be incorporated in the NFL or in the Steelers running game next year. So maybe they're kind of leaning on Warren taking a bit of a step forward this year. But what did confuse me later on in the article, if you scroll down and you start reading into the late teen or early teens and single digits, they included a lot of kind of the old guard, I like to call them, like Josh Jacobs and Aaron Jones and Saquon Barkley. And it was just, I don't know. It kind of made me scratch my head a little bit because those guys are just not in their primes anymore. And I know it's crazy to say that about guys that aren't even 30, but that's just the nature of the running back position at this point. So it did make me, scratch my head a little bit. But yeah, I don't know if I'd include Rachaad White in the top 20, even myself, as much as I love the dude. Like, he seems like he's an explosive player, and I think he's going to take a huge step forward this year. With the article, I think it was appropriate that he was an honorable mention. But Mr. Tariq, ever the optimist, maybe you can jump on here and warm my heart by defending Rachaad White, or maybe you can take a dump on him just like Zach Blaine.
Oh my God.
I'm kind of gonna.
Oh,
I'm kind of gonna do in the in between.
for sure, sitting on a fence.
I can understand, I guess, why he's honorable mention. I feel like our running back situation was quite mortifying before the season started last year, or when it started. Yeah, there you go, my big vocab word coming out there. Yeah, I learned that from my colleague. But no, I have to say, I think our running back room, or specifically Rachaad White, I think it was kind of a step forward every single week, and I guess maybe that's why he was seen as honorable mention. It's not like our run game was anything special at all. And yeah, I guess they're kind of sleeping on the pass catching ability, but every single running back has some kind of specific skill that they bring to the table. That's Rachaad White, but on top of that, I mean, I feel like a bunch of other guys got that too, so it's understandable. I'll also tell you this, man. I don't take too much into heart these kind of articles from these sources like CBS, Fox, US News Today, or whatever. Yeah, so it's just to keep the interns busy during the off season.
Yeah, this is very much an off-season topic. This is very much we need to scramble to find something to publish, so we're gonna rank the top 20 running backs in the NFL. Why don't they just do all the teams, just rank all of the starting running backs? But I digress. That's another time, another story. But yeah, I just thought it was something interesting to talk about, because I'm a big Rachaad White fan. I'm going to draft him in all the fantasy leagues that I think he's appropriate in. So I'm pretty stoked to see how he can continue his success from last season. But after all that, after all my Rachaad White love fest there to start the episode, move on to the dream player trade scenarios. And we're going to start on the offensive side of the ball. We're going to each submit 2 players and also talk about the compensation that each player would require. Almost all of them are going to be draft picks because that's just the way the NFL works. It's not a player for player thing. This isn't baseball or basketball. It's pretty much exclusively player for picks. So that's what we're going to talk about. And Mr. Tariq, I'll throw it right back at you, my man. Get us started. Who's your first offensive trade?
All right.
Target.
Oh, shoot. All right. Well, I'll tell you this, full disclosure. I'm not, this is not my forte or my cup of tea exactly. Same. It's the same way I feel about cap space and all that. So
no, absolutely.
It's whatever I kind of, know. And, obviously I did look, I did some looking up, of course, and some information. But I guess my first guy, dream trade is I want a power back. Okay. I want a power back. So I'm going with James Conner. He's also got that kind of pass catching, role as well, which is nice. I don't know what the whole kind of contract money situation, but if the Cardinals are willing to trade him for, I guess, like a mid-round pick, depending on, their depth chart and our depth chart. But that's someone I'd like for sure. Just because, yeah. I mean, listen, with all due respect to Bucky Irving, he's not a power back. That's all who has wanted. I don't think Rachaad White's a power back, so that makes me think, well, then, what exactly is this kind of equation we got here? You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. So are we just going one by one, or you want me to
Oh,
drop
I
my
figured
second one?
we'd all do one, and then we'd kind of make the loop around and do our second round.
Exactly. Let's do it. Yeah. Who's
For sure.
next? I'll
Yeah,
pass it on to Zach, I guess. Oh,
All right, there we go.
absolutely.
So my first one, I also went running back. I don't know that I'd label this guy a power back, but I do think he's a between the tackles runner. I'm going with Dameon Pierce from Houston. He's a guy who rookie year had 1,100 yards, kind of came out of nowhere as an undrafted guy. I believe he was undrafted, if I'm not mistaken. No, was he? He was a late round pick, though. Okay, my fault. Not undrafted.
Good.
Again, we're not
Yeah,
experts.
he's in Florida.
So this guy came in, kind of surprised people by being an 1,100-yard rusher his first year, and then last year, it seems like he fell out of favor in Texas. Plus, they have Joe Mixon coming in, so it seems like there's not very much room for him. So if I'm Tampa, I'm throwing out maybe a 4th-round pick to get him, and that's high. I will say that's high. I would like a 5th-round pick at the most, but if I had to send a 4th for Dameon Pierce, I would take that risk because he is so young still. There's a lot of tread left on the tires, and I feel like he'd fit in very, very well in Tampa and would probably take that lead back role and let Rachaad White be more of what I think we kind of expect him to be as like our 3rd down / pass catching back.
Yeah, no, I love Dameon Pierce. He was a huge fantasy guy his rookie season because they just didn't use him really very well at Florida where he went to college. So a lot of people were kind of like, oh, this is a sneaky pick. And sure enough, he had a great year his first year. But like you said, certainly fell out of favor. And the Joe Mixon thing, which I still don't get it all for Houston. Very odd. He was not listed in the top 20 running backs. He was not an honorable mention. And they paid him. I don't know.
They paid him solid.
They paid him a lot of money. I don't know. I'm with you though. Dameon Pierce, I think he could become available as the season progresses because ain't no one going to take that Joe Mixon contract. So Pierce is a guy that could absolutely become expendable for Houston. Maybe he grows disillusioned with his role. Kind of an awkward like, hey man, like I ran for over 1,000 yards one year. Like, why am I like relegated to this backup role? So that could be kind of an interesting storyline to follow, especially since Houston's trying to build something right now.
Yeah.
So having kind of an awkward situation there in the locker room might be something that they want to avoid. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm certainly sold on Pierce. I really wish Houston would give him more of a chance and not sign Joe Mixon, but alas, that's the card that he's been dealt, and maybe it'll play out for the Bucs in their favor. But my guy to start things out, I went a little boring. Joel oh goodness, Joel, the guard from Cleveland. I won't butcher his last name anymore, but he's been fantastic. Like he's one of those veteran guards that's just been in the league for half a decade plus. He's been really, really good. He's banged up a little bit by knee injury last year, but Cleveland's been a bit rough the past few years, especially offensively. And they are in one of the best divisions in football. So they could very easily fall out of the game pretty early. And maybe Joel is a guy they look at and they're like, well, he's kind of expensive. He's a guard. He's probably not going to be around for the next successful Browns team. So maybe they give him up for like a 4th rounder or so. But I think that the Bucs, if they're given the opportunity, if they're competitive during the season, I wouldn't mind them giving up a 3rd rounder for a guy like him because he would come in immediately be really, really freaking good for that offensive line and really turn this offense into kind of a dominant machine. If things are going well, adding Joel in the middle of that thing, that would be crazy. So, yeah, that's kind of my dream trade scenario would be trading for him. And I'll come back around. We'll snake draft this bad boy. I'll also go running back. I know we're all banking on that position. Mine's definitely way out of left field. He's Kenneth Walker III out of Seattle. He is really good. Like he's fantastic. He's been really, really solid for Seattle, but they spent another 2nd round pick on Zach Charbonnet, not in this year's draft, but last year. I don't know. It's kind of strange. I didn't really understand the pick at the time, unless they considered Walker kind of expendable, quote unquote. So Walker could easily be dealt for kind of similar to Joel out of Cleveland. I'm not going to try to pronounce that last name. The third rounder later kind of deal, assuming, of course, that Seattle's willing to part with him, because they could very well go into meltdown mode. It's the NFL; crazy things happen. But more than likely than not, he's going to stick around in Seattle. But he's only got 2 years left on his rookie deal, so it's just kind of something to monitor. And I was a big fan of him coming out of college, just really super athletic, kind of a power back, but also super elusive and stuff like that. So big Kenneth Walker fan. So yeah, that's my second guy, Mr. Blaine. Throw it right back at you. Who's your second offensive dream trade?
I'm going to go a wide receiver here.
Okay.
We've talked about maybe needing another wide receiver in the room. This guy is someone who I think has been kind of put in the wrong position in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take Treylon Burks. Big body, 6'2", 225. I think he could learn a lot from playing behind Mike Evans and kind of being his backup / replacement in the future.
Right.
He's still really young. I believe he's 23, about to turn 24.
Mm-hmm.
Just hasn't been in the right style of an offense, I think, for him. I think that Tennessee is was a run-heavy team up until this year. We don't know what they're going to do. And I think that he needs more targets, and I feel like if he came to Tampa, he could get those. And I'd give up like a sixth for him at this rate, because he hasn't been productive in 2 or 3 years in the league.
Absolutely.
He's been almost non-existent, so I'm not giving up more than a sixth for him.
Yeah, honestly, like for a dream trade scenario, Treylon Burks is very realistic.
Yeah.
I've advocated not necessarily for the Bucs trading for him, but just sitting back and waiting for them to cut him. Because they've talked about relegating him to special teams, and they've got that new GM and new front office executives seem very willing to move on from early round picks from previous regimes very quickly. I mean, we saw it with the Raiders. Like, they drafted that Alex Leatherwood guy in the first round, and everyone was like, what the heck?
He was gone.
Yeah, he was gone after his rookie year. So new GMs are very willing to move on from past GMs' mistakes. And Burks could be one of those casualties. So, yeah, he's a name to monitor. I mean, honestly, at most you give up a 7th round pick for him at this point, because you're kind of expecting Tennessee to cut him. But yeah, if he's available, absolutely. Burks is a really nice depth piece at worst, and at best, maybe like you said, he eventually replaces Mike Evans. Mr. Treek, though, bring us home. Who's your second offensive pick for the dream trade scenario?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think this could be a possible reach, I guess, based on the kind of contract situation and what we'd have to offer. But I'm looking at another, wide receiver. I think that'd be real nice. I mean, just even having Evans, Godwin, and Jacoby Myers, wide receiver from Vegas. I think he'd be really good, reliable route runner. He's got the good hands. Obviously not as explosive as some other options, of course, but I think he'd be a good target for Baker. But cost. Now, I mean, by all means, feel free to chip in. I mean, I'm thinking maybe 5th, maybe 6th. Yeah.
His biggest flaw, unfortunately, has nothing to do with his game. More about his contract. I think he's owed a bit more money than he probably,
But the Bucs, they always work their cap space magic. So I think that's what I was hoping for.
Absolutely. And if the Raiders are giving him up for draft compensation, maybe they work it into the deal where they eat some of that money.
Yeah.
That would probably be a big factor in that type of trade discussion. But Jacoby Myers, like you said, you nailed it right on the head with your evaluation of him. And I'm really excited to see, if he would be able to fit in this Bucs offense. He's kind of similar to Godwin and Evans, like you said, not super explosive, but he'll get open. He's very, very possession oriented. So yeah, he'd be a great addition to the Bucs offense. I'd be super stoked.
He's had injury history as well, hasn't he?
A little bit. I also think he's just had playing for the Raiders, itis, if you want to call it that. Aiden O'Connell itis, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
He's playing with basically just, it's brutal, and he's going to have to deal with it again this year. Poor guy. So yeah, I wouldn't look too far into last year's. It was just such a mess in Vegas. I don't even know what to say with the Garoppolo situation, and then them firing the head coach, and McDaniels was gone. It was just a mess. So I give pretty much the entire Vegas roster a do-over in regards to production, because they were just, it was a huge mess. But yeah, definitely a dream scenario trade candidate for sure, but realistic for sure. Absolutely. But if you're looking for, it's realistic, but it's still a dream scenario for addition for your wardrobe. Definitely check out shop.rblrsports.com. We saw it mentioned at the beginning of the episode. We've got some really, really great gear. I know Mr. Tariq was flashing his own shirt. And we've got some other great options as well. If you're looking to spice up the wardrobe before training camp, we've got some Bucs gear, we've got some Lightning stuff. And of course, the Rays are playing those dang Yankees right now. I think they're losing 1-0, unfortunately. So you can definitely check that out as well as the Lightning. I know Stamkos is gone, and we're all dealing with the heartbreak of that. So, can pick yourself up with a fun little purchase, a little treat.
Some therapy shopping. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's what they call it these days.
It's a real thing.
Yeah.
It's very much a real thing. So yeah, we'd really appreciate it if you could check it out. And we'll give you a promo code Cannon, CANNONS. Type it in, get 10% off your entire order. All right, so we'll go to the second half of our episode, and if you've been following along, you can probably guess we're going to focus on defense now. We've got some fun defensive players for dream trade scenarios. And Mr. Tariq, I'll start with you, my man. Who's your first pick for the dream scenario on the defensive side of the ball?
Oh man, dream. I'm going to start out with Dante Jackson, cornerback from the Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is. I mean, now that I think about it, especially with the situation that he's on the Steelers now. I mean, I was thinking, he's got that experience playing zone coverage, which is definitely something, part of the Buccaneers defensive scheme, of course. And I had heard about him before. Actually, my buddy's unfortunately a Panthers fan, and yeah. So I mean, I remember he had mentioned that this guy is like a young prospect. I mean, he could be big or something. So he's got that upside. But I mean, he is the starting now cornerback for the Steelers, and I think there's a good chance he balls out. So I mean, obviously, it's going to have to be a reach for sure. I'm thinking like a 4th round pick. I don't know.
Yeah, day 3 pick for sure. Yeah, definitely nothing crazy.
Yeah.
Jackson was really, really solid when he was healthy with Carolina. Out of LSU, I love my LSU guys. He's super athletic. He's a really, really fun cornerback in that regard. But yeah, just health. But it's the Steelers. They also play in that really, really difficult division, just like Cleveland. And Jackson was recently flipped to the Panthers, and so to the Steelers from the Panthers, excuse me. So they could very easily decide, hey, this guy's kind of expendable. The cornerback room is something we need to address in the draft moving forward, and Jackson's just not going to be a part of that. So yeah, a 5th round pick or later 4th round pick, like you mentioned.
I mean, I'll tell you this, guys, anyone who's shown production, because our cornerback room, you know what I'm saying? So I mean,
sure.
In the past couple years, things happen. It's been a roller coaster for sure. So
absolutely,
I just want someone who's reliable more than anything.
I mean, Zion McCollum could go down with an injury, and then the Bucs are SOL because they just lost the best cover corner in the NFL.
Without a doubt, brother, 100%.
I know he's Zach's favorite cornerback in the NFL. He's like the modern day Darrelle Revis, honestly. But
that's if not better.
Those are Zach's words, not mine.
Well, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Speaking of Zach, give us your first pick for the defensive.
Musab nailed it on the head. Both my picks, I'll go ahead and I'll break the surprise for you. They're both corners.
For sure.
So we're going to go first one. We're going guy from Philly, James Bradberry. Another guy who I believe played on the Panthers before he went to Philly. Yep. Had a really, really, really good first year, almost like a resurgence in Philly his first year. But much like everybody on Philly last year, just a complete collapse. I think that he is a solid player, and I would slot him in as our second corner already. But I don't – it's one of those things. He's 30 years old, so he's not going to be a long-time guy for us.
No.
So I'd be willing to give a 5th or a 6th for him. I'd prefer a 6th, but it might take a 5th because he does have some previous years of productivity.
Yeah.
But I do think he would upgrade our cornerback room instantly.
Yeah, absolutely. He would slot in as a starter for sure, but yeah, it's tough with a lot of these guys. Their contracts are just rough. Unfortunately,
Yeah,
Bradbury's
it's
kind
up
of
there.
gross. Yeah, he's kind of grossly overpaid for the
Yeah,
production that he provides. So if Philly's willing to eat up a large chunk of that deal, similar to the Jacoby Myers situation, I think that could work out swimmingly for the Bucs. Especially because Philly, we talked about it throughout our live draft episode. They spent multiple picks on the cornerback room, so they have some young guys that are ready to step in and kind of make a difference.
yeah,
So maybe Bradbury becomes expendable, and if the Bucs are desperate enough for cornerback help, they could be willing to give up a day 3 pick for him, and the Eagles say, "Hey, we'll take it. We'll take any compensation. We'd rather get that than lose him for nothing." So I totally get you. So yeah, Bradbury, solid pick. I'm going to start on the edge. I'm going edge rusher first, right out the gate. Matthew Judon from New England. He's
love
been
it.
in a weird scenario as well. He seems a bit disgruntled with his long-term contract there in New England, or lack thereof, I suppose. So who knows if he'd be, because I don't know that the Bucs are going to give him that contract extension either. So I don't know. It's kind of a weird situation. He's taken to social media to voice his complaints, which, hey, more power to him. Like, it seems like he's had some really productive years in New England. I mean, he's been kind of a lone bright spot in an otherwise kind of dark cavern of void.
Yeah,
No talent there in New England. They were
him
a
and
top 3
what
pick for a reason.
Jabril Peppers was the other kind of bright spot.
Yeah. Hmm.
They're the only two bright spots on that team, man. It's bad.
It's tough. It's tough. It's brutal to see. So yeah, Judon would be an interesting addition. Just a really, he'd be another solid veteran. Especially if the Randy Gregory situation doesn't work out. Who knows what that's going to end up doing. So Judon would be a massive upgrade, honestly, over JTS and Yaya Diaby. He'd be huge. If they traded for Judon, that'd just be huge.
Yeah,
But the Patriots could also cut him. It's kind of another situation where maybe the NFL is just kind of like waiting the Patriots out, saying, "Hey, you clearly don't want him. He clearly doesn't want to be there. Y'all can just cut him," which would be great too. So that'd be wonderful. So I'll follow that up with another pick. I'm not going corner. Surprisingly, I know this is going to make Zach rip his hair out, but I'm going linebacker. Jamin Davis from the Commanders. He's out of Kentucky. Former first rounder, hasn't been great in Washington, but he's also had to play for Washington. So, God bless him. So he might be worth, a day 3 pick, kind of similar to all these other guys. We're not really shooting for the stars here because the Bucs are not going to be trading first round picks for anybody at this point. That's just not where they are in their rebuilding or building process, whatever you want to call it. They're not trading first for anyone, and deservedly so. They don't need to be. But yeah, Davis would be a really fun addition in case KJ Britt doesn't work out or Servassier Dennis is not working out. Maybe they just need someone to kind of come in and start next to Levante David. And Davis would be a lot of fun. He's operating in a 4-3 right now, which is a bit awkward of a shift to the Bucs scheme, but you never know. It's not really that weird of a thing for him to make that transition. So yeah, Jamin Davis is my guy. Zach, I'll throw it right back to you. Who's your second cornerback for this part of the show?
All right, listen. This one is like the dream of a dream of a dream. Like probably my most wanted trade that I've made tonight. Greg Newsome from Cleveland.
Ooh, wow, swinging for the
Yeah,
fences.
he's a very good player, and this is kind of he's not tradable because he's playing bad or not productive. He's tradable because of, I can't believe I'm going to say anything good about Cleveland. The depth they have at cornerback, this like starting level players they have at cornerback, they've got too many of them. I mean, you've got Martin Emerson, who had a breakout year last year. You got Denzel Ward, who's never going anywhere, or at least not anytime soon. So that just kind of makes him expendable. He's a guy who's played both outside and slot corner, and he's only 23. Another guy who I think is going to be 24 this year. So he would come in and instantly be the number 2 corner, not a doubt in my mind.
Yep.
I think he might even push for CB1 if I'm being honest with you.
Sure.
Unfortunately, I do think that it would take a bit more than what we've been giving up so far.
Yeah.
You and I had talked about it a little bit earlier. Maybe a second. I'd feel more comfortable at a third. If they asked for a third, I'd send it to them wrapped in whatever they wanted.
Interesting.
But I think that they could push for a second, and I wouldn't be mad at Tampa for spending a second on him.
Right. I think this is where we kind of diverge in opinions on roster building, because at most I would give up a fifth for Greg Newsome. I don't think I'd give up that high. You're trading for a guy that he's that young and he's on a team that's pretending to contend at least. I definitely like Cleveland's a great team that drafting. Like, as much as I hate what they did with Watson, hate how they've handled a lot of situations, they draft really well.
They really do.
For sure. So I get that. But I think that, if you're able to get him for, if he's tradable, if the Browns are willing to part ways with him, I think that there's a bad reason why, like either he's fallen off a cliff, or maybe he's a locker room cancer. Like he's not really meshing with the team or whatnot. So I think at that point, then you'd only give up a fifth. It's just tough to give up like a round 2 or a round 3 pick for a second, a cornerback 2. Especially when you're not a cornerback 2 away from a Super Bowl, so it can be a bit difficult to swing for the fences that high. But I do agree with you. I think that's what it would take to trade for him. I just don't know that the Bucs would be willing to part with that, which maybe rightfully so. Like Brian Burns got a second round pick, and Brian Burns is one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. So that's kind of where my mind's at least with it.
Yeah, but Brian Burns needed to be paid too.
That's true. No, that's a great point.
So that's kind of the upside with Newsome, is he's still on that rookie contract, so he's still cheap.
Right.
And, in my mind, I guess we've had this conversation before. I don't look at drafting as much as, like, look, Greg Newsome would be better than any second round pick you're going to get. Starting off, So with a guy on a rookie contract still going to be better than any second round pick next year, I'm okay with it. I wouldn't trade a first for him. Like, first round picks, that's your primo number one. Like, you don't, in my opinion, you don't trade that unless you're getting a superstar player back.
Right.
But a second round pick, I would be fine taking a flyer on Newsome. Again, I'd want it to be a third round, but I would be okay with a second round for him because of that.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. If they're that desperate for cornerback help, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. Mr. Tariq, take us home again. Who's your second defensive dream trade scenario player?
Yeah, I think this is pretty dreamy indeed. I'm looking at Harold Landry, edge from Tennessee Titans. Yeah, I mean he's got a fat contract. I mean, I feel like the production doesn't really kind of match the size of the contract. I think that's what I was kind of thinking as to why I chose this guy. But I mean, yeah, I think it's a reach for sure. I mean, this is like I'm thinking like a third rounder. So that's just kind of where I stand, because the way I see it is, minus the fat contract, he's someone who can contribute on the field immediately. And I mean, we've been needing, I feel like we've been talking about this whole off season. It's always just been edge rushers and cornerbacks, so if not a cornerback, let's get an edge rusher.
Yeah. And I think what's difficult about edge rush contracts and all that stuff, like I know Zach and I were just talking about the Burns thing and how he got paid. It's just the positional hierarchy, an edge rusher is just inherently more valuable to an NFL team. At this point of, whatever line of thinking the NFL GMs have, it just seems that pass rushers are more valuable than a lot of other positions, which, right or wrong, that's just how it is at this point. So they're going to pay even an average pass rusher kind of a lot of money. So I think that explains his kind of contract situation. But I feel you, like, in terms of his production, like, it doesn't match up, like it's not.
It feels like when we look at it, we can go, "Ooh, that doesn't add up." But then you look at it in terms of like what the average middle or average edge rusher is making, and their contract's really not crazy. It's just when you look at it in terms of, well, that's not a star player. Like, why is he getting paid that much? But it evens out when you look at it, and I think that's the craziest thing in the world to me.
Yeah, and I do understand, like, it does seem kind of weird, but I also get it. Like, you got to get after the quarterback nowadays. Like, it's so difficult to cover receivers that, like, if you can just reduce the amount of time that a quarterback has, even by fractions of a second, then that's hugely valuable. Like, a cornerback can only do so much. So I do get it from that perspective, but I do also understand what you're saying, Zach, for sure. Like, it's weird. Like it can be very strange to look at pass rushing contracts. But that's the NFL. That's the league we're in. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. Hey, if any of these guys get traded, Tavier Thomas for the past 2 years has been on this list for me, and now he's in a Bucs uniform, so that's hype as hell.
Thank goodness.
Whoever, right? Whoever,
So excited for it.
Your dreams come true.
for sure. Exactly. I dreamt big. I was shooting for the fence, shooting for the moon, and landed amongst the stars.
I'm changing my list then. I want Jalen Waddle on the
Right.
I want it.
Oh man, but no, who knows? Even if they don't get traded, maybe at some point down the road, the Bucs will eventually acquire one of these guys. It could happen. It's the NFL. Weird things happen every offseason. So, yeah, we appreciate y'all for sticking around. We're coming near the end of our episode. Appreciate y'all listening to our inherent rambling about what players the Bucs should trade for and what weird draft picks they'd give up and all the conditions and all that stuff. It can get complicated, but we're definitely going to be coming back with another episode next week. And we'll be another week closer to the NFL season starting. Training camp's just around the corner, like we've been talking about. So definitely stick around for that. So like and subscribe if you like what you heard. You can definitely stick around and find out some more great content that we've got coming out and across the channel. Like Musab said at the beginning of the episode, follow us at RBLR Sports on all the social media accounts, and we've got some great content coming across our channel. So definitely check us out there as well. But we really appreciate y'all for tuning in. Thank you to my co-hosts. And as always, go Bucs.
Go Bucs.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.